I will do the cloud. All right.
Yeah.
So fantastic. Let's get started. Welcome to Service Design Drinks Berlin. My name is Adam. This is Dee on my right, on my left. And here I also have Marty. And we are part of the team of the Service Design Drinks. And this is the event you guys have been all waiting for. We are super, super honored and excited and really a little bit shocked still. I still have to pinch myself that we have two fantastic designers to talk with us today. They are Sarah and Lou. Before I get them to introduce themselves though. So this will be mostly a conversation, but we have some very, very exciting stories to share. So first things first, what we have to do is we have to make sure that everyone has a drink. Water, coffee, tea. I have tea in my designer teapot. But I thought I'm way too nervous, so I got out some rum. And I also have rum. Yes, but you can drink whatever you like. So go get a drink. This event will go for a little bit of time. We also like to welcome everyone. So it's so great that we have people from all over the world, really. Köln, Switzerland, Barcelona, some from Prenzlauer Berg, which is really far away. That's a suburb in Berlin, for those that don't know. And we like to include everyone. So this is a place of inclusion and a great place to meet people. Everyone should feel safe. And if you don't, you can write us a message just to make sure that we can remove or deal with the certain situations that might come up. We also have a Slack channel. You can go to SDD Berlin to join that as well to keep up with the latest in events and community stuff. So you can meet people there as well, ask different questions, or add everyone on LinkedIn. This is also a place to level up. And I'm sure, as you will see throughout this talk, we have some bunch of questions to ask Sarah and Lou. But if you have a burning question that you would love and would help you to level up, then please also do that. And this is a place of sharing and learning, speaking practice and coaching, and having drinks and sharing in the great thing we call service design. So also on that, if you would like to do a talk, although we haven't done this in a little bit, you can also approach us if you would like to talk about something or have someone you would like to talk to, then please let us know and we can try and foster that. We are here for the community first and foremost. So this is the team. Marty was here, Dee is here, and our lovely two parents, Gabor and Merila, are taking some maternity leave, I would say, at the moment, moving house and doing their lives. So it's also good. We previously did the jams in Berlin, but now we're doing the service design drinks, and it has been a really fun year. So, like I said, we have Sarah and Lou joining us today. Well, now it's just Sarah joining us today. And their cat.
It's just the cat is going to replace Lou. They're far more interesting.
Okay, the cat will give us a great perspective, feline perspective. So yes, let's get started. Oh, did I stop sharing? No, I'll stop sharing. Fantastic. All right, now you should be able to see us a bit better. Cool. So we have, no one's answered my poll yet. Come on, people, answer my poll. You can do it. I believe in you. Okay, so we're going to get started with Sarah here, and I guess everyone might know you already, but for those that don't and just joined because they thought this event was cool or they got told to join it by some person, my girlfriend's here, I told her to join. Maybe you can just quickly introduce yourself and tell us who you are, Sarah.
Hey, hello everyone. Yes, my name's Sarah. I'm known as Ruffle Muffin online, if you've encountered my Twitterness. So yeah, I am the CEO of a design studio called Snook that was founded in Scotland, but now based in London as well. I'm the chief digital officer of a big technology firm called Northgate Public Service, and I really like design. And Lou's here.
Why Ruffle Muffin? What is Ruffle Muffin?
Oh, it's a very silly story. It's basically a teacher I used to fancy at school, and I used to say we needed a code word for them, and they used to ruffle my feathers. And I had a muffin on my desk at the time, so I came up with the name Ruffle Muffin. And it's a terrible dating name, though. Don't use it as a dating profile. It's not okay.
Well, it sounds well filthier than it actually is.
Very filthy. It's not. It's a very innocent 12-year-old nickname for the teacher I fancied.
It's a very English thing to say, I would say. Lou, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, so I'm Lou. I am Director of Transformation and service design for land and planning in the UK government. What else? I wrote the book to the left of Adam. They're modelled excellently, brilliant lighting. It's very bright orange. There's one back here as well. Yeah, and I am drinking some homemade cherry brandy, which is why I wasn't here at the beginning. It was definitely required.
Fantastic. Homemade, as in from yourself or from someone?
Yeah, so that my side hobby is basically making increasingly weird homebrew and various foraged things, which Sarah often accompanies me on.
Okay, fantastic. So I guess Corona time for you is also a great time to get into your hobbies.
Exactly right.
Things to your repertoire. All right. We're going to start off with a bit of a quick fire round of questions. We'll go through and get into the media questions a little bit later. But to start off with, can you please tell us what is your favorite meal to have when you are sad, or what is the favorite meal you would have when you want to celebrate?
Oh.
Well, we have a shared one.
Oh, okay.
The guacamole, deep fried guacamole balls is like this thing we found in a vegan restaurant, and it's like if we ever feel sad,
It's really good.
we go and get it.
Yeah, it is delicious. I mean, I think my other sad thing, which is like very British, is pasta, baked beans, and grated cheese. And I'm sorry to anyone Italian. But this is a regular thing that, like, I don't think anyone in Britain really acknowledges the fact that sometime in the 80s, pasta was kind of introduced into supermarkets and no one really knew what to do with it. So we all ate it with things like mayonnaise and salad cream and like weird stuff like that. So my sad dish when I'm on my own is pasta, baked beans and cheese. Sorry.
And also because no one else can see you eat that. It's so embarrassing. Like,
Just me.
Pretty much.
I make
it.
I have to make it. I have to go through the pain of ruining pasta.
Yeah.
sorry,
We also,
Italians with that
you know,
one.
celebration meal. We used to kind of be into eating seafood until we realized a couple of years ago after our anniversary that Sarah was allergic to seafood. So that's like not on the menu anymore.
That's a bit of a bummer here.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Second question. If you were to invite anyone to dinner, not family, because we all love family, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I'd invite David Bowie because I'm just a massive fan and I never ever got to see him live. So I basically like only feed him dinner on the order that he performed like all his entire back catalogue from front to back. But I just think he's a really interesting guy and I'm really interested in like the sort of like visual like aesthetic that he created and the different characters for each of his kind of works of art, and particularly in his latter years, like actually thinking about his artwork like kind of after he dies, like what happens of that. I just think he's an absolutely fascinating guy and makes amazing music. So yeah, he'd come and perform and then he could maybe have some pasta, beans and cheese.
Don't give David Bowie pasta, beans and cheese. Give him the guac bowl.
Fair enough. And what about you, Lou?
I think I would invite Florence Nightingale because I think she would be fascinating and tell all sorts of really interesting stories about her kind of time in medicine. But I would love to hear what it's like to kind of have this incredible brain for statistics at a time when ultimately, you know, she wasn't expected to be thinking about those things at all. So yeah, I would love to ask her all the questions over not pasta, beans and cheese, probably something different.
I'm sure. I mean, it's a cultural delicacy, I would say.
Yeah, I think she'd get it.
All right, next one. This one goes with a bit of gossip. Sarah, I heard you're a DJ. What other interesting hobbies do you have? Or if you were not a designer, what would have you become?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, I am called DJ Drummond Bass. Drummond Bass, get it? Yeah. It was a joke name. Actually, yeah, I became a DJ because I really, really, really love music actually. And I always wanted to DJ and I really fancied this girl once who asked me if I could DJ and I said yes and then had to learn how to, so I didn't become an idiot. And could
Are you seeing
DJ
a pattern here, Adam?
So
you want to be interesting, impress other people.
Yeah. So just say you can do stuff and then you have to do it. It's genuinely my life motto. No, I mean, your question though about what would I do if I wasn't doing design, I'd absolutely make films, make documentary films in particular. Like I really love the format and I always wished I'd done more of it, and I should do more of it because anyone can make a film. But yeah, that would be my definite pursuit, and then still pretending to be like an electronic DJ on the side, which I still do. I mean, I'm close to professional.
Have you been paid?
I've been paid in drinks. Let's put it that way.
Right.
In drinks.
That's fair salary.
And the friendships, the long-standing friendships that I create from my musical.
Yeah. We know how well an evening of drum and bass DJing is going by how many times Missy Elliott is played. And it's either a 1 Missy, a 2 Missy, or a 3 Missy night.
You decide which one you want to be at.
Level 3 Missy Elliott, I don't know.
Sounds really Missy. Anyway, yeah, okay. Terrible pun number 1. Moving on. Okay, so that's it. There's no more questions coming in from the crowd. So yes, let's move on. Oh yeah, one more bonus question, I think, because we have the time. You mentioned a few times that you change your identity a little bit, or for dating different people. We get you guys are together now, but if you weren't, what would your Tinder or online dating profile highlight?
I don't know, Lou. What would your online dating profile highlight? We're going to be like divorced by the end of it.
Hopefully not. No, please don't.
I think my excellent foraging skills, you know, like who doesn't want to like hang out with someone who can, you know, make all sorts of weird stuff out of stuff they find on the street, you know, that's a skill.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, survival basics 101 is how to do this. Okay. So let's move on to a bit of a deeper question now. So the first theme that we're going to talk to you guys about is growing in your career. So you guys are both like quite, I mean, I didn't understand a lot of the job titles, I have to admit, from what you guys are doing in the different companies and organizations, but they all sound very serious. Sounds like you have to deal with a lot of white men and a lot of ties. So I think this is a really, really interesting thing. I remember first hearing Sarah talk back in 2010, maybe? Almost 10 years ago, yeah, back in Australia. And she was the reason that I actually got into service design. So I'm going to blame her for all of my mistakes in life now. Yeah, so I've now you guys are in these positions of authority, but you guys have obviously journeyed quite a way to get there. So that's really exciting. And we want to dig into that a little bit now. And I think one way to do it is, you know, is always to ask for examples. So what is like your first big successful project that you have? What did you learn from that? And what would you decide to never repeat? So it was like on the positive and on the negative side. What was like the big win for you, or one where you thought like, yeah, amazing. I can see my designer ego being shown in the usage of other people's lives or affecting other people.
Do you want me to?
I don't mind.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go one for one.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess like I was thinking about this question. I want to go right back to kind of almost at the formation of Snook. So Lauren Curry, who I set Snook up with, and I developed an idea called My Police, which was basically like the UK's first online police feedback tool. So what that means is that you could go onto the internet at a time, remembering, 10 years ago, you're going to kind of cast your mind back to how much kind of talking to any public body online was kind of a novelty. And you could go on and you could give feedback, whether it was positive or negative, geo-tag it to a location, and then the police would respond. And it was the first project that we ever did together. And it was really successful in a sense. Like, we managed to completely change the way the police talk to the public. We got it live, which is half the battle. It took us about 2.5 years to even get a pilot. And we managed to change some like local, not laws, but kind of regulations based on feedback, which is amazing, and really be part of a kind of like, I guess, a sort of like new way of the police actually talking to the public. Because as we were doing this through a product lens, we were teaching them how to use social media. I mean, I would honestly, we both go to conferences, be probably the only 2 women there, dressed slightly differently, trying our best not to look like art school kids and look more like the police. And pitch, and the next person up would be like Ed from, Wolverhampton Police Force, and he would be showing the tweets he'd sent that year. I mean, that was kind of how innovative it was, just to give you a real picture. So I'm really proud of that, because I think it was a real kind of social innovation moment, and people often talk about that term but don't really explain what that means. And I think it was changing the way that people do stuff and behave. What would we never do again is completely mess the business model up. So we taught them so well that they decided to use Twitter and Facebook and not pay for the product. And so you know, in a success, it was success as a design and a product. It wasn't successful. It's successful in a commercial sense. And that really gave, you know, for me anyway, particularly like commercial nous, I think, from quite an early young age. And we were about 22 or 23 when we did that. So it was, yeah, it was a real success. And it paved the way for Snoop, because we blogged about how we tested stuff with users, the police force, all the time throughout the whole process. And Snoop was born really out of that. So yeah, it's a really cool moment for us.
Awesome. Very cool. The side and the user side, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying, I think I'm trying to think of kind of one example here, and I was sort of trying to think of like what's a good sort of story to learn from, and I guess that, you know, kind of if we're going back to like the sort of first thing that I almost like kind of think of as like a sort of successful thing, I spent a lot of time just like, I mean, firstly, I didn't study design like Sarah. I studied fine art, and then I worked as a writer, and then as a producer, and then I found my way into design. And so I think my first like kind of design thing that was kind of a success was actually when I was working for a big telco, and it was round about the time, so it's probably around kind of similar time actually, around about the time when basically telcos were massively expanding the kind of data services they were providing to their users, and realizing that actually they couldn't make any money at all from calls. So they were trying desperately to kind of claw at these different business models that would mean that they were going to make money from data, which is a super intangible thing that no one understood. And there was this project that I was asked to do, which was essentially kind of pricing up different types of internet that people could get access to. And this was like way back before anyone was talking about breaches of net neutrality. This with net neutrality was just a kind of like a glint in kind of people's eyes. You know, we all believed that the internet was equal and fair. And I was asked to create an app that ultimately, you know, kind of helped price the internet differently according to if it was Facebook or if it was something else. And I managed to get them to not do that. And I almost got fired. Almost. I was that close to being asked to leave and being replaced by a more malleable designer from the company I was working for. But that for me was like a really kind of like, I guess, seminal moment of actually, you know, like, no, designers are supposed to have an opinion. And, you know, I'm not just supposed to sit here and do whatever you think is the right thing to do, because you just haven't necessarily thought about the massive unintended consequences to this. So yeah, it held off for probably about 5 years, that particular telco doing breaching net neutrality. They did eventually, but, you know, thankfully it was 5 years of blissful equal internet.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome to have designers. Yes, definitely need to have a role and an opinion and an effect. I guess this is also the first times where you really felt like you pushed into society, right? You had a role to play, and you also learned what that role was as well, which is really cool. I find both of those projects super massive as well. Like, you guys really jumped into it, like, you know, in these first big projects. It sounds like you really got your hands dirty and stuff like that, and I think that's also something that I'm so impressed by. Did you mention, Lou, what you would never repeat again from this?
Oh, what I would never repeat again. Oh my God, running in heels. Seriously, that job, honestly, if you could see me back then, I had like blonde hair down to my waist. I wore like tiny pencil skirts, tiny little heels. I have size 3.5 feet, like any kind of heels. Like, I'm like trotters. Like, it's not good. And I did that ultimately because I just thought that was how you needed to be to kind of convince people of your opinion, and you needed to kind of fit in with an organization. And I don't know how old I was, like 26 or something. I don't know. I didn't know any better. And I just remember this horrible moment when I was like running after this executive down this horribly kind of like weird taupe colored hallway. Like, basically telling him like, no, you can't ask those questions and user research, thinking this is bullshit. Like, I could run a lot faster if I was wearing trainers, and that was the last moment I ran in heels.
Bravo. Yes. Also, why do telcos always look the same? I worked for telecom for a little bit. Also had terrible interior design. Anyway, that's another discussion for another time. So I think one question, one little bonus question we have here is, what's on your top bucket list for 2020?
Ooh, maybe to get out of the country.
Not this country, into the countryside.
Yeah,
right?
Okay,
we're actually going on holiday Friday, and we're going on a lovely holiday in the UK. But yeah, we had a nice trip planned.
Yeah.
That'd be my bucket list. But we're going surfing, so my bucket list is to stay up on the board for longer than like 5 seconds. Would be my bucket list.
I think my bucket list is to stop eating like there isn't like an end of the world situation going on. my response to lockdown has basically been to hibernate. So yeah, I might, that whole finding a new normal, I'd quite like to do that.
All right, let's jump back in. I mean, you guys both have quite some rewards, and like an impressive list of recommendations and nominations and stuff like this. I'm curious, is there one that you really find that you're most proud of, or one that you definitely told your parents about? Or what's the one that got your parents the most proud?
I can answer this one first.
You go first, yeah.
So I think the one that made me the most proud actually was so when I was working for the Government Digital Service, we won lots of D&AD awards, and it was kind of a thing. I think D&AD wanted to make a point of the fact that it wasn't just marketing agency, so they just kind of gave loads of, what does D&AD stand for? Look it up.
I'll just Google it.
I'm glad that you guys did that also. We'll have a look.
No
Okay.
one refers to it as no one. Seriously, it's probably not even on their website.
Hold the phone.
Anyway, if someone could put a link into D&AD, so I don't need to explain what the acronym is.
Right.
Oh,
I think it's design and advertisement, isn't it?
There you go. Yeah.
I think.
No, that would make sense. Yeah, thank you, Carolina. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so we won a couple of those awards, which was very nice because because it's advertising, they have very nice award ceremonies. And the one that I'm really proud of is actually what's called a brown pencil. So it's like the lowest award that they give to anything. But we got given the award basically for what was called step-by-step guides on gov.uk, and it might seem like a really simple, stupid thing to get an award for, but essentially it was the first time that gov.uk had actually restructured any kind of content, any kind of service around actual user needs, rather than the kind of, as a department, wanted to sort of describe those things. And sometimes, kind of obviously those services kind of work out well, and sometimes they don't. But ultimately, this is the first time that we'd actually had some kind of navigation structure around services. And it had been a thing that, kind of myself and Kate Ivy-Williams, who was working on it hugely, and Mark Hurrell, who was then head of design for gov.uk, kind of really pushed for years and years and years to happen. And so it was a huge achievement, even though it was kind of a very small thing. And we took our tiny brown pencil to the little photo booth in the corner, got very drunk on all the free champagne, and then went home.
Awesome. Congrats. I mean, that's a huge pivot, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like it. It was good.
Sarah, do you have an award that you're really proud of?
Yeah, I mean, was it last year, the doctorate? Yeah, I got a honorary doctorate from Glasgow Uni last year, which was like, it's kind of surreal. It hasn't really quite sunk in, to be honest, because last year was quite crazy for our business as well, in a really positive way. There's a lot going on at the same time. Yeah, I got an honorary doctorate, and if you don't, I don't know if everybody on the call knows what that means, but it's like kind of like, you can call yourself doctor, basically. It's like it's basically like getting this sort of the same reward as doing a PhD, but not actually having to write anything, which is super cool. But it was really, really lovely, actually, because it was in respect of all, I think, the work I've done in raising the profile of service design, and particularly in Scotland, and for it to come from my old uni, Glasgow School of Art, and for I've forgotten what it's called, but there's an official name to the dict to something that the head gives anyway of the art school. It was my old head of design who gave my kind of speech about inauguration, whatever. Yeah,
thing.
It's all very, very posh. You kind of wear like big gowns. People get hit on the head with like a stick.
It's like Hogwarts.
Yeah, it really was like Hogwarts. But I got to give a speech to all the students that were graduating that year from art and design and architecture, and that for me was an incredibly special moment, because it was literally 10 years since I graduated to the day. I'd sat in that hall 10 years before and kind of dreamt a little bit about like changing the world, and to give a speech that is to people that are 10 years, you know, in a different time, you know, was really amazing, and sort of telling them that they can change the world, you know, too. And, you know, there's a lot to change actually around like making things more diverse and all the stuff. So that was a really, yeah, that was a pretty special moment. It's still not really sunk in, to be honest, but it was pretty cool. And Lee cries, so it was
I
nice.
did, of course. I cry at everything, but I definitely cried at this. And also you get to put doctor on all of your like cards now, which is very exciting.
I don't think it's here. No, it's not. But Lou actually got me as a celebration gift one of those little brown wooden blocks that sit on a desk.
Dr. Drummond.
And it just says Dr. Drummond, which is really lovely. But yeah, that was super nice. And my mum and stepdad came with my family and Lou, and we're all treated to a nice slap up dinner, which was lush. And I think you guys are already on it. Oh my God, I was about to say, Matthias, well done. I actually wrote my speech is on Medium. So yeah, super cool moment. And but also respectful of like the fact that, you know, all the work that I've done, it's not my work as well. Like it's Snook and it's the team and everybody that's been involved in that. So it was a kind of like super cool celebration for all of us. And we all got, it was a pattern, very drunk at the end of the night.
I would also say that the Glasgow do a really good service design education as well. If anyone's looking for a good course, I often get asked this, what universities would you recommend for service design? And I would say that this university is also a great one. I found out about it because also Sarah mentioned it. So that was also a great way to get to know it. But that's really cool. That's such an achievement. Well, there's some reading for you guys to do at home for all those people playing at home. All right, I got the last question for this kind of thing, which is about the two different roles that you have, and it relates to the poll that we had. So we had about 30% of people that are in-house designers. We had about another 20 or so % that are agency and consultancy. We had about 20% that are freelance, and we've actually had about 30 people that are students or designers or non-designers. So there's also some interesting data there. But this one, Lou, you're working in-house. I would say that you're working in-house and have been for a majority. And Sarah, you're working in the agency and also founded an agency. What drives you insane about the other one? I don't want to get you guys divorced, but no, what do the other ones get wrong, or what do the other ones get right? How do you guys best work together? Do you have a recommendation if a designer is looking for which direction to go, should in-house or in an agency, which personality suits which personality? Yeah, what should we know?
You want to start, or do I want to? I feel like you have opinions on this.
We have opinion. We've had this question before. I'm like, and let's not disagree, but we just have a challenge to one another. I mean, ultimately, I think the first thing to say in this, Adam, is like people often say either or, right? It's like I can really do either or. You need both. Like you absolutely need both. Now, Lou can talk much more about this in depth, but you know, to really get the job done, you've got to be in-house, like full stop. Like really, really get the job done and delivered, you've got to be in-house, because a service or product is not just a design, it is what the organization is. You know, they have to be designed in order to deliver that and be kind of on board with that. So I think, like, from my perspective, what I've always tried to do at Snook is form some kind of plan of embedding ourselves, whether that's being a critical friend that provides a fresh perspective and they trust. And that means we can go in and out quite quickly, but we're the fresh perspective. Whether it's actually what I've always believed in and we've always done is building the capabilities of our clients while we're doing the work and empowering them with our tools. But we're there to kind of lead them by example through some kind of small examples, which are often part of a wider, say, transformation program of work. But we will give them exemplars of what that looks and feels like. Or whether we actually embed staff for a longer period of time as well. So as someone who, you know, I work in a big organization now, separate to Snook, and I sit on the board of a couple of organizations as well. You know, I kind of acutely understand what it's like to commission work out. And a lot of it's, you know, it's not great. You get stuff, it gets handed over the wall and nothing happens with it. So you've got to be, if you're running an agency or involved in an agency, just be respectful, I think, of people that are actually there on the ground who are having to sit in meetings and get that shit delivered all the time, and be really pragmatic and practical about all the elements you need to affect, not just the user experience. So, you know, I think agencies can feel really short, and they shouldn't be used for certain things, but for, you know, inspiration, building capabilities and doing demonstrators while setting in line with that strategic vision for the organization. If you need an external partner to help do that, they can do it, but they should never do it alone. And Lou can probably agree with that.
No, I do. I do agree that, strangely enough, I do though. No, I think I guess sort of like answer to the second part of your question, Adam, like what does either side kind of get wrong? I think that there's a perception that if you want to work in an agency, if you worked in-house too long, you won't be able to go back again. Not true. I don't think I've ever seen that to be true. Certainly from the people that Sarah and the other agencies that I know and have worked with, that's not the case. It works both ways. People are constantly cycling between in-house and agency side roles these days, and it really those delineations just don't really work anymore. So for all the kind of I guess people thinking and considering career options, I would say don't worry about it. I think in-house is a really good space to be able to have more time to be able to work on something and actually really learn about not just the process of being a designer and being around other designers, but being around people who have skills and expertise that's totally different to you, and ultimately having to spend a lot of your time explaining why you're there, what your role is, why design is important. Those skills are super important, ultimately, even to working in-house in an organization, but also to consultancy as well. So I think that's kind of one thing. One thing I would say on kind of agency side that sometimes kind of is kind of gotten slightly wrong, or historically has gotten slightly wrong, is just not thinking about the long-term legacy of the work that's done. So I have very often kind of come into organizations after an agency has been there, or kind of experienced people kind of commissioning work on both sides, and realized that actually 6 months later nothing has happened. And that lovely, piece of design work is ultimately a really nice PowerPoint deck that's gone into someone's drawer and into their LinkedIn profile and got them a new job. I have got so many clients new jobs, and that ultimately it's not what you aim for as a designer, and it's not what you aim for as an agency, kind of providing really lasting impact to your clients. So I think, one thing that I always really respected about Snook and what Sarah does is actually, is actually just the thinking about, upskilling and scaling the work that's done. And it's not just about the delivery of the work. It's also about like, what skills do you leave behind? How well does that organization really understand what they need to do next? Because often it's kind of like this big, like, ta-da, okay. And then, and now what? Oh, well, that's another 20 grand. Thanks very much. So I would give that kind of message to anyone who's working on kind of outhouse design projects, is to really just think pragmatically, like, what can you do that, like, if you were to rethink your project along the lines of what lasting effect you would make, not what like kind of ta-da moment you would have with your client, like how would that reshape what you actually deliver?
Very cool.
Nice way of putting it.
Yeah. Having switched from IXDS and an agent to now a product, you can definitely see the benefits. And you're right, it's not either or. And I do see the shortcomings of having a deadline, which is good, but time boxing is always a nice thing in design, but then not being able to consider the next steps or the longevity, or being able to work with the people that actually build the service, right? I think is a huge challenge there as well. So yeah, fantastic. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next thing. The next topic is around lessons learned. And I think this also, we can start off with a question, which is from your learnings along the journey that you took, how, especially for junior designers or people that maybe aren't at the top level, so don't have that authority to come down, how can they make a difference at a company, or what advice would you give them if they wanted to have more impact? How have you had impact? Also, how you had seen designers having impact, I would say.
I mean, my advice, this is to anybody. Oh, I want to give this, not give this advice. I mean, like, I want to level this with the question I get asked all the time as well, which is, what can I do to get into service design, and get a service design portfolio? I think it's sort of a similar question. My advice is, like, find something that's broken and go and fix it. Like, really simply, like, find something that does not work inside an organization, whether you're part of that organization or not, and fix it, or coalesce some people around to get it fixed. And it can be even a really tiny, small thing, but the process that you take, the way in which you show people how you did it, which, in a designful-ish way, will be about listening to needs, like, looking at how you help people do something, thinking about that user journey, thinking about the organization that needs to be able to design it as well. Like, you know, all of that is my advice. Like, that's what design is about. It's about making stuff work for people, really. And so you shouldn't really overthink anything about, you know, if you're external and trying to get into service design, you know, should I go do a massive master's? Well, you know, no, not unless you feel that you need the time to really think about your process and your mindset around it. Or if you're on the inside, should I start a, you know, try and get a massive design program running? Nobody cares about design, really. People care about, you know, meeting their KPIs, whether it's profit or, you know, it's helping save people's lives, like whatever the kind of outcome might be. Yeah.
To get your hands dirty as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would also say, you know, kind of one of the things that I find happens, sorry, I'm going to move over to here because there's an actual road sign in this office, and it's very reflective. It says good services are verbs and bad services are nouns.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? I don't know. Yeah, it's.
How can I get one? No,
yeah.
You would like to add to that as well. So how can junior designers have impact?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I think is most important is to not focus on methodology and to not spend your time trying to convince people that design is important, to get them into a workshop, or to try to do any kind of you know, performative service design. You know, it's kind of following on from what Sarah was saying, of just like find something and fix it. We spend a lot of our career, and it's not just, you know, kind of people at the beginning of their careers, it's people, you know, I've seen them, you know, kind of 10, 20 years into their career who spend their time really, really focusing on getting people to buy into service design and not enough time actually designing the service. So I would say that's a kind of major thing, is just sort of forget about the ideology, just get some stuff done.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I cannot stress enough that selling the process is so last year.
It's like 2008, Adam.
Can't do workshops anywhere with Corona, so yeah, I mean, you can't. I have a blog Medium about that, so you can read my Medium article about how to do remote workshops. So that's definitely something that's good. All right, moving on to the next question. This one I'm very curious about as well, because now kind of in a midway junior design, or going from junior to mid to senior, what is something that you look for when you walk in to a team, or you get asked to help a team, or you're setting up a team, or you're pitching for a new project? What are the red flags, or what are like what's the 10-point checklist that you kind of make in your head? Okay, first I think, do we have the right people in, or this kind of thing? Do you have like a 10-point check, or what are some big red flags that you see that you just think, okay, yeah, that like slam the big button, let's cancel this project and restart, you know?
So I think Sarah has more choice about slamming a big red button than I do. So
yeah, I guess we can start, and then you can maybe talk more about like a team. So yeah, I guess I'm in the perspective of like being interviewed by clients a lot. You know, I pitch for a lot of work. That's my job. And I always not just pitch for work. I set a vision for people, what we should do together. But, you know, when we were smaller, we didn't have much choice, right? But as we've got a little bit bigger, we've got some kind of major streams of work now, we have a little bit of ability to sort of say no to certain bits of work. And I wrote a blog post about this, which is on my Medium, which is, I can't remember what it's called, but it's something like, you know, how to procure service design, I think. And there's a lot of, you can kind of read through that and take them as red flags. So, you know, for example, if someone is trying to get me down to the minutiae of like, how many hours are you going to deliver something, you know, design something and deliver, which is what we're kind of always asked. It's just a massive red flag for me, but it's not a red flag that results in a no. It's a red flag that results in me asking some questions to that prospective client about, well, why do you not have trust? Have you been burned before, you know, by certain experiences? And one of our best clients, I can't say who it is because I don't want to say they got burned before, but one of our best clients that we've had in years, I mean, the team had an absolute ball with them, asked us to the minutiae of detail, you know, and I asked them and they were like, we really got burned by an agency last year and we want to know exactly what you're going to deliver and when. And I sort of obviously managed to talk them around and we ended up having a great relationship together. But that's a kind of flag for me. If there's no, you know, owner for that piece of work beyond the person who's commissioning it, So kind of getting into that sort of service ownership side, or an owner of a kind of transformation program or whatever it might be, then that is, again, it's not a no for me, but it's a flag that goes, well, who else do we need to be talking to when you commission this work? So you can often have people sort of, particularly and I feel like we stereotype when we talk about frontline middle management, you know, exec, that's a little bit stereotypical, but makes it easier to kind of discuss it. I find often middle management have got some really big ambitions and dreams and a bit of budget to do some work, but you recognize quite quickly that they've not actually got a strategic buy-in or a vision from their CEO or their exec team or kind of direct sponsors. So you got to really, I think about that side. So, you know, there's loads in the blog, I think, probably go into rather than waffle on, but I think there are some kind of really critical things for me. I'd say actually just one other key one that I've remembered is that when people start commissioning service design or designers to produce outputs, not outcomes, that's a massive, massive, massive red flag for me. And they often result in a no, like we don't want to do this work. So what I mean by an output, it might say, we want you to produce a journey map. We want you to produce a persona. We want you to produce, you know, a set of themes. And my question is always like, well, what is it we want to do? Is it impact users' lives? Is it to make this agency, you know, better at being more creative? Or, you know, what is the actual goal? And I think you just need to have those in your mind when you're thinking about, you know, taking on work, because as Lou said earlier, like it's rubbish for everybody involved when, you know, nobody gets the right result, right? So that's a few things, but yeah, the blog will probably tell you, I think there's 16 things, so not to go through them all.
Yes. Lou, do you have something from an in-house perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my sort of red flags are slightly like later down the process, because Sarah's obviously involved in the kind of the pitching of them. I'm on the other side of it, writing those ridiculous bids that ask for stupid things. Hopefully not. But I think my red flag is always actually a team that aren't connected to the organization. So they are just kind of working in their beautiful isolation and not necessarily there isn't necessarily the buy-in for the work they're doing, and they feel like they're doing really great stuff and they look like they're making incredible progress very quickly. But ultimately you ask someone who's in an adjacent area of the organization, have you heard about this work? And they're like, I don't know. Which ultimately means that, you know, when they start like, you know, going into kind of, you know, product prototyping, you know, into alphas or whatever they're doing, it's going to be a really, really kind of steep climb in terms of actually delivering anything, because that's the moment then you suddenly need to get everyone bought into something that's already happened. So that's always my red flag. My kind of learning for this year is actually employing people explicitly just to do engagement and relationship forming around teams, so that those teams don't have to do it themselves, because it's a full-time job in a big organization. So that would be kind of like one thing. I think the other thing is like where a team is just involved in a perpetual discovery. That happens, you know, and just
discovery-itis.
Yeah,
the term.
And it's really frustrating for them as well, because, you know, they kind of, as much as they want to go wider and wider and wider, it's really frustrating if they don't actually end up getting to anything. And I guess my red flag for that is always like, and I, you know, mean absolutely no offense to the user researchers on this call, but is there a disproportionate amount of user research to design? Sometimes that can actually cause that issue. And like, we all love problems, we really do. But if you're going to keep chasing the problems and there's not enough people to then kind of work out how to bring that into something that's kind of a solution, then maybe that's an imbalance. Also, maybe sometimes there's just not the vision there. You know, maybe it's probably normally me who hasn't explained what the problem is properly, or what the boundaries are. And so giving teams real boundaries and saying, look, this is a discovery area. You know, you're looking at building a fair housing system, but you're not looking at fixing the entire system itself. Just tell us which so you can start wide, but when a team is kind of perpetually in discovery, I think that's the moment to step in and go, okay, well, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think you look at so many different things, and I have to say, stakeholder involvement, if you can ask another team and they have no idea what the other team is doing, that's awesome. I also like this idea of, well, I don't know if anyone's watched The Witcher lately. There's a character called the Bard, and the Bard always sings about what the Witcher's doing. And it sounds like exactly what you're getting into your team, like these people that go around with guitars and like sing of the glorious of this team and the work that they're doing.
Design.
Yeah, this is what they're doing. So I love that as a role. Like I'm trying to drive it also internally, and internal communication and getting people involved and getting that awareness also increases the chances of success. So it's a new level of multidisciplinary as well. I think that's really cool. All right, great. I have one more question, which comes from the crowd. What does your typical work day look like?
Well, I feel like we've got an extra insight into each other's work days since lockdown.
Okay. What have you learned about Lou's workday, and what have you learned?
Oh, that's a good question. What have you learned about my workday? Polite answers,
that I wouldn't want to work for Lou. No, actually, Lou's very, very lovely to work with. So it seems, I can ascertain from many Zoom calls. No, I mean, I think a lot of, actually, it's really interesting. A lot of Lou's job, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is communicating that vision all the time and reminding people what that vision is. So I think you spend a huge amount of time doing that. And then, interjecting positively, and Lou is very positive in your work, which is nice, which is to point out things that have maybe not met things like a good design standard, but in a really, really positive and proactive way, and to help people with that. And then think about really shapes of teams. I think that's pretty much your job. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And continuous snacking and sometimes kitchen.
Yeah, I think what I've realized as well about like Sarah's job during lockdown is that there is so much operational activity involved in running an agency. So like I have a huge privilege of having a team who manage an awful lot of things that I don't even know about, things like finance and things like legal things, and they're all experts and I love them dearly, and they know that I'm not good at any of those things, and so I don't really get to know about them very much. What I really learned about Sarah and Sarah's job is that so much of that is kind of like so close to you, and the kind of what something is and how it works is just this constant kind of negotiation of running an agency, and it's not just like, yes, it's about inspiring people, and yes, it's about setting vision, but it's also about being there and being there for the detail, and actually being there and making sure that you're having that conversation with that person who's upset, and you're having the conversation with the client who is a bit kind of unsure about something, or you're doing, you are literally a jack of every single trade. Like I come in and it's like you're having a conversation with a really high-end client, and then you're having this kind of one-to-one with someone who like is about to have a baby, and then it's like this kind of constant sort of sort of cycling of lots of different roles and lots of different hats. So it's really fascinating. Not what I thought.
What did you think I did?
I don't know, just had conversations about visions and things like me.
It's a good question though. I think I am slightly, for those on the call that don't know, like I did sell the business last year as well, and my role is moving actually much more to CEO based role, as we have built an incredible senior team of people and a managing director. So that's been great for me, but it is interesting. I'm in a transitionary period actually, which is super tough in itself. It's very hard as a leader of a business of 10 years to let go. So I'm moving much more to kind of just doing the vision shit that Lou does. But no, I'm kidding. Just really actually doing much more vision setting with our clients and with our teams about what we can do. So.
Yeah, I guess that goes. Someone just asked a funny part, like what part of each other's day would you like to switch roles for?
So I can say this. So yes,
nothing.
We actually had, this is. Bear in mind that both of us have chosen our respective paths, and we are happy with those paths, right? But we both had our kind of like all staff conference / away day, whatever you want to call it, on the same day, and which is creepy. We also were doing talks at the same time, and I remember logging into mine on Microsoft Teams and being kind of addressed by some very serious conversations about homelessness, which is a really big issue that we're dealing with right now, and in the background hearing basically the Miami Vice theme tune, and the rest of the Snooks basically going, woo, away day. And so a little bit of me was like, man, wish I could go back to
What you wouldn't give for
agencies.
Miami Vice.
You know, that seems like a good time. But yeah, you know, like it's a very different world, you know, kind of when you're sort of a big sort of government corporate environment that's full of lots of people from lots of different backgrounds versus people who, you know, are kind of sort of like-minded designers all in the same place, you know, kind of it's a different world.
Sarah?
I probably wouldn't take any of Lou's jobs, to be honest. That's why I stayed really quiet. No, I mean, I get.
That's right.
No, I think what Lou's doing is incredible in terms of setting a strategic vision, you know, for around housing and land in the UK, you know, and elements of that. And, you know, Lou's been very successful in working across government to raise money. And, you know, it's always a money game, no matter whether you're in-house or out-house. Like, money is what makes the world go round. But Lou has a really amazing position to be able to think about how you might spend some of that money. And I think that is a real privilege and honor. And I think you know, what I wouldn't give to give up the agency hamster wheel, you know, that's tough. You've got to keep bringing money in. And I think in government, you've got to keep your money too. So it's not to say that it's just there and it's easy to spend, but I'd love to have that space, I think, a bit more space to think about one thing in particular, because my role is very varied and a bit all over the place, you know, so I have to be very jack of all trades. So I'd really give that kind of space and time. And you seem to work with awesome people. They all sound very nice.
I'm sure you also do get to celebrate a little bit in the government on
yeah, we do. Maybe not with Miami Vice, sadly.
Okay. All right. So so that was the kind of lessons learned, and I think there is a lot of great lessons and also good things that you think about on a day-to-day basis, or what your role actually entails. And at this top-down level, I think it's also something to inspire and start to think about also how you continually talk about vision and you impart vision. I think you should be even starting that at lower levels, right? To keep reiterating these stories that has revisions. Oh, one more question, sorry. What are your, like, in your roles, obviously, you know, we are learning so much from you, but who do you learn from, or what resources do you constantly go to for improving your role? What do you do to sharpen your sword, so to speak, or sharpen your axe?
Well, I mean, I tell my team this, and I say the same for myself. I never read a design book except for Good Services by Lou Downe, of course.
Good Services.
I mean, actually, that was a really great book, and I just saying, because it's not an obtuse design book about process. It's about actually what makes a good service. So apart from that, I go completely out of design industry. So, you know, there's people who are my friends as well that I really respect, like Cassie Robinson. You should follow her on Twitter. She's an incredible brain about like systems thinking and changing the world in lots of different ways. I love Cassie's work. I love Imi Kaur, who runs, it's now called Civic, but used to be called Impact Hub Birmingham. They're doing incredible work around bringing some really awesome thinkers together, like, you know, Kate Raworth, who wrote Donut Economics, you know, working with the IPCC and IPCC? No, I can't remember. Sorry, I forgot their name, but I'm working with Mariazza Mazzucato, who does like mission orientated work. And it's a really awesome group of women, actually, who are thinking about, you know, how to change the world, but really address the underlying like economic problems around capitalism that actually exist. And I think that's really inspiring because, you know, I always say to my team, and we were chatting about this the other week, is when you're designing, are you here to address the symptoms or the cause? And I'm really interested in people that are actually really trying to address, I mean, I think symptom work is really good, and that's a lot of what Snook and many other agencies and all of our life's work is about, is trying to solve stuff. But people that are really working on the cause, like economic imbalance, you know, like how the world is based on like GDP, and it should really be based on actually what our resources are, which is the planet. So Kate Raworth and others, those kinds of people I've mentioned, I'm really inspired by, because, you know, I think they're really pushing us. They don't have the answers, but they're pushing us to think about stuff at a much grander scale. And then for one last name of someone who I've always considered as any closing keynote I wanted for a conference to come and do, even though he'll show up at the last minute and freak you out that he's not coming. He closes every conference with such flair, is Indy Johar. And he runs and is part of a number of different entities called Architecture 00, Dark Matter Labs, who are super impressive, thinking about, you know, the really deep stuff around global governance, economic models, how these things need to shift land prices. And that is about cause, not just symptom. So that, and those kind of people inspire me because they're thinking really wide. And I think you kind of, you know, you need sort of those sort of people in your life.
Very cool.
So I think my answer is maybe kind of similar, but maybe slightly different. So the thing that I use to kind of, I guess, make sure that I'm improving, I don't have a lot of time, and I'm dyslexic, so reading not necessarily my thing. But there are some books, I'll mention some books later on. But the thing that I really like to do is actually ask people for feedback on how I'm doing. Not a lot of people kind of do that, I feel, at kind of senior levels. We all kind of feel like we're either scared of what people think of us because they think everyone hates us, or we just think that we already know. And actually, it's really, I've had the most profound kind of realizations about how I need to improve and what I need to do by just simply asking people. And, you know, it's difficult to get people to be honest, but I always, you know, kind of copy in whoever my manager is at the time, currently the CEO of our organization, and say, you know, like, tell them if you don't feel comfortable telling me how you feel about me, then please just tell them how you think I'm doing. And it's always really, really interesting. So that would be my first piece of recommendation, is just get used to getting feedback, and, you know, not just on your work, but how you're doing as well. You know, I think we're used to, as designers, getting critique on our work, but less used to it on ourselves. So I think we should get used to that. I think there's a couple of books that I always return to, which is probably helpful for people to kind of know. I mean, obviously that one. I actually haven't read it since I wrote it, because reading. So one of them is actually going back to Florence Nightingale. She wrote an amazing book called Notes on Nursing, which is possibly the best book I've ever read on the craft of consultancy ever. And it's basically a book that talks about how you should treat people with respect and love and care, and how you should understand their needs. And it's about that kind of the bit of your work that's not just about the design, it's about caring for your clients and your colleagues and the people who are going through change around you. And it's just this amazing analogous kind of story about how to deal with that, and how to deal with people who ultimately, you know, as a doctor and as a nurse, your job is very similar to a designer. You're getting people to do something that they need to do, but not necessarily what they want to do. And so there's a lot of craft around that. So that's really interesting. The other book that I really turn to all the time is called The Uses of Disorder by Richard Sennett. And it's basically a book about conflict. And it's a book about how conflict is good for people, and how you need to actually kind of, the world needs those conflicts. Otherwise, nothing kind of happens. Nothing ever kind of grows if everyone just kind of doesn't talk to each other. There's no diversity, there's no clashing, there's no melding of new ideas. And so I really love that book, and I would definitely recommend it. So yeah, those are my kind of two books and one thing that I do. I'm quite a creature of habit.
Okay, cool. I think that, yeah, we talk about internal conflict a lot when we're working as well. I think it shouldn't be shied away from, but this friction, I guess, is really positive thing. I think we need to get more used to it as designers. Okay, so I mean, you're jumping to my next question, which is to give you a really nice segue into talking more about your book, but I just want to take a break, 2 seconds, and ask, do you guys have any other questions that you would like me to ask? Anything that you think would be interesting to know from Sarah Lou? Please write it in there. But also in the chat, Dee and Marty are also giving you all the links that are getting mentioned. So all the books that get mentioned here and all links. So if you're wondering, oh, I missed that thing, please have a look in the chat and you can see them all. And if you've got others to add, then please do this, like the Dotty Festival. I'll have to check out that festival. Thank you, Elaine. All right, so leading question to the book. Can we talk about the book?
Yes, we can.
Where did the book come from? How did you decide to read this book? And mine's water damaged. Can I get a new one?
Yeah, yours is, you are using that. Yeah. So it's interesting. I actually, sorry, just before I go into why I wrote the book, but the physical design of the book is deliberately designed so that it scuffs up really well, and that it kind of, it's designed to be shoved into a bag and just used as a manual. So I'm glad to see it's doing that for you. So yeah, I wrote the book because I guess I was frustrated by having kind of what felt like really repeated conversations about what is the point of service design and why are you here as a service designer. And it felt like a lot of the problems that was kind of stemming from was the fact that we couldn't describe what we were there to do and what actually kind of good looks like for our profession. Yeah. So if you think about, kind of graphic design, you've got, kind of things like the grid system by like Herman Miller Brockman. You've got some really seminal kind of pieces of kind of guidance, and we might all disagree with them slightly, but they are there at least as kind of guidance on what good looks like for that thing. Same with medicine, same with law, same with almost every profession. And if you look at service design, that it felt like there was kind of nothing. There was lots of books about how to do service design, about how to, kind of do a user journey map, and how to, kind of run a workshop, and all of these really helpful things, but ultimately didn't really tell us kind of what good looked like for our profession. And that meant that it was really difficult to have those conversations about why we were there. And it made it really difficult for people who are not service designers, who have no aspiration to be service designers, to actually know when you're doing a good job. And it made them, as Sarah was saying earlier, it's really difficult for them to commission good work, and it's difficult for them to review it, and it's difficult for them to lead and manage organizations when they don't have any designers. And so I wrote the book ostensibly for people who are not designers, to explain what good services are, and ultimately kind of how to build good services that work for users. And for designers to stop having to have that conversation. And so it was interesting because I had a lot of kind of conversations, quite heated conversations with a lot of designers who said, well, it depends, obviously, kind of dog grooming service is different to a healthcare service. And like, yes, there are major differences between them, but there are some really basic things that almost everyone needs from every service. And they are things like being able to find the service, being able to use it without exactly. So there are 15 very, very basic principles of what a good service is in the book. And they are both written by me, but also kind of written through a massive community effort. I published a Google Doc about 2 years ago, where I think I ended up having about 2,000 comments. It was really difficult to deal with all the comments on it, but just talking about what does good look like across every sector, across every country that was represented, and what we ended up with was those 15 things. And so it's not going to teach you how to build an amazing, brilliant, mind-blowing service. Those are literally the bare basics that you can do to make sure that your service does what it needs to do. But that's what the 15 principles are there for.
I have to say, I've already shoved it around in enough people's faces at Delano. I think they're getting sick of it. But what I love about it is that this process first in craft, getting your hands dirty. It doesn't matter how you get there, but there's now a checklist, which okay, does it do this? Oh shit, we didn't think about that. Let's put that in or change this. And I totally agree with you. And so, you can get licenses for, you study your extra further years, an accountant or an architect, and you get qualified. And I think this is a super good step in qualifying this industry. So I'm absolutely blown away with the book. I'm curious, out of the 15 principles, what had the biggest change or the alteration, or where did all the comments kind of land?
Oh, that's really
controversial. Can you give us like an insider scoop here?
Yeah. So actually, what was really interesting, so the one that said that your service should essentially be equally accessible to everyone. So which is principle number, be usable by everyone equally. That had a lot of opinions on it, and it was really interesting, and it was such a good debate that happened about it that actually really, I guess, broadened my understanding and perspective on it, and I ended up having a lot more conversations about it because of the things that came up in the Google Doc, because it was just at the point where I think a lot of the kind of collective consciousness of the design world was kind of shifting from equality to equity, and what that looked like, and actually shifting from accessibility to inclusion of many different people from lots of different reasons. So as designers, we often think about accessibility being to do with essentially kind of physical cognitive disabilities. We don't think about access to money, access to broadband, access to time as things that exclude us from services. And actually, it's really a matrix of all of those things in combination. And you can kind of get a sort of stacking of those things in certain circumstances that makes it really difficult for someone to use a service. So that was probably the most controversial, or the one that had the most opinions about it, that I certainly changed the most as I had more conversations with people about it.
Oh man, not having internet, I'm just like, my company wouldn't exist. That's crazy. Sorry, yeah, it's so good. And this is what this book does. I cannot strongly recommend it enough. I'm so glad we got to talk about it a bit, because like it really, so good. All right, so I'm gonna stop blabbing on and just get all blushed and red-faced. But cool. I mean, the process of writing also must have been absolutely thrilling as well, to have something that's published and stuff. All right, do you have any comments about the book, Sarah?
I mean, I wasn't allowed to actually read it or proof it, because I gave feedback on a very early iteration. And as a designer myself, I am very good at giving critique. And being married to someone, they're very bad at taking critique. So I was then banned from reading any of the book. I mean, look, I genuinely, I'm not just saying this, I think it's a phenomenal book, and I tell all our clients, all our team, everyone to read it, and if they can, to go into Lou's training as well, because, you know, the industry, in my humble opinion, has become very dominated by process and chats about tools and methods. And actually, we really need to get an understanding of what good design looks like, particularly for people who don't think about design on a daily basis. If you know what good looks like, you can strive towards it. And I think this book ultimately does it in a kind of quite funny and humorous way, with some stories that actually involve me, but nobody knows that.
Yeah. I mean, I would also say funny thing, I mentioned it before, but like as a dyslexic author, it's an interesting process kind of going into this, because you, being dyslexic, you tend to be quite good at kind of storytelling and sort of making things really simple, and, you know, all the really great things that come with dyslexia, but also all of the really challenging things that come with dyslexia. So I actually had 2 editors that worked on this, and I had to buy them both dinner afterwards, because it was a lot of work that both of them went through, and I think one of them, fantastic sub-editor named Claire, who actually works for Marie Claire magazine. Her kind of feedback was, so Lou, you know, on a book normally of this size, you have about 200 corrections. I've got about 3,000 for you. So to anyone who's thinking about writing a book as a dyslexic person, do it. You're going to be great at it, but make sure that you allow enough time for the corrections, is my one piece of advice.
Yeah. I think that's also such a, not just writing a book, but being in a position of authority and lead, like know your weaknesses, right? And know what you need to get there. Yeah. Oh man, 3,000 edits, that's a lot. I remember, yeah, writing, it was hard.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on a little bit. So this next section is about, like, now that you're kind of giving and writing the book, I can kind of leads us to the next topic, which is, it's just around service designers and designers in general. What do you love about them? What do you hate about them? You know, what do we represent to you as a community? What would you tell everyone as a community? And I think the question here, well, let me find it. Like what sorry, okay. What do you think? I think what do you think is the most overused and least understood service design tool?
All of them. So I guess, like, my kind of feeling on this is like, I'm not anti tools. I think, you know, kind of make your own tools, use whatever tools, call them what you like. But I think the problem with a lot of kind of service design conversation is that it has become so much about tools and not about what we're actually doing. And so, yeah, my you know, but in a way, the kind of misunderstood and overused, like, that's what they're there for, right? Like, yeah, supposed to be misunderstood. They're supposed to be you know, changed and iterated and you know, adapted. Like, that's any good tool, you know, that's kind of the definition of it, right? So that, yeah, I'm interested to see how people who have never designed a service will pick up, kind of, something like this is service design thinking and go, oh, I'm going to apply this to something completely different. You go, yeah, that's really interesting. That's great. Go ahead.
I think for me, like the most kind of underused tool is not a tool in itself. It's just communication. Like, I gave a talk to our team about a few months ago at one of our show and tells about how design is like 90% communication and 10% actual design. Like all of the time you're trying to communicate, coming back to vision, like a strategic imagination almost for what you want to create. And so it's not about a tool that's misunderstood or not used, but genuinely like prototyping your way through that is not, it's become, I don't know, lots of different types of prototypes you could do. I don't really care. Like, just bring the imagination to life about what you're trying to do and communicate at the right level and right tone and right, format for people to come with you on that journey. And so, narrative, storytelling, communication are actually the tools that are most important, rather than actual tools that we might be used to looking at in a kind of service design library in itself. So
yeah, but I think one of the things that we don't do enough of though is like, yes, like communication, but also like just thinking about the ethics of what we're doing, right? Like it feels like service design often is kind of a little bit of a victim of its own kind of business friendliness. And I actually had an ex-boss of mine describe me as, the business friendly face of design the day before I got a tattoo, but that's aside. And I think there is this perception that, we're there to kind of mediate between, this kind of world of sort of focusing on users and creativity and the business and business needs. And ultimately, sometimes that does mean saying no to things. And I say that with all the awareness of kind of how perilous and how privileged you have to be able to say no to some of those things in the workplace, and how difficult that can be. But ultimately, I think there's almost this kind of belief that our entire value is actually wrapped up in how well we can sort of work with other people and be at the table and be in the boardroom, and how little noise we can make. And actually a lot of what our value is just making some fucking noise, like, and telling people that, what they're doing is not the right thing to do in a nice way, but, actually kind of changing the course and changing the direction of things, to think about what the consequences should be of that thing.
Yeah, making some
apologies for the bad word. Yes.
I'm now going to have to edit and bleep it out. Well done.
It's totally fine. Actually, it's really great because you mentioned this. I can do a little plug for our first ever service design drinks talk was about ethics and designer ethics and ethics in design. I think it's also super important, but it's also about communicating, because we have to be able to make noise and be confidently making noise as designers. I think that goes with the rule, and I think that goes also with communication, which I think is really powerful. All right, we're in the home stretch. I want to get a little bit of a recap and a little bit of a reflection from you guys. I think that you guys are both really activists and do a lot of great work. We had lots of bad words, so this is not the first time. Apparently we've messed up. Okay, so I guess you guys do a lot of great work with a lot of people and in government and also in agency. I think I kind of, now I've had to change my, I'm going to try to do it anyway. Now that I think we're at a very mature stage, or everything is kind of designed or getting designed, and design has such influence, what do you think is next for design, and specifically service design? Like, I feel like service design is getting more accepted. Where do you feel we are now, and where do you think we're going next?
I think, in a way, actually, what's next for service design is to actually deliver on its promise of designing services. I think we all kind of, service design is often kind of guilty of sort of being one step on the road to another bigger design, business design, or, system design, or whatever else you want to think about it. And, so often actually you hear a lot of those conversations happen in the context where you look at the service that, kind of the organization that's having those conversations about really big, lofty ideas, and you're like, I can't sign up to an account, or you're not sending me an email when I've signed up, or, kind of really basic things. And I do, obviously I'm very passionate about, kind of the basic requirements of what makes a good service, but, actually kind of doing those things, I think is is kind of sadly, actually, no, that's what we're here for. That's the whole point of service design, is to design services. And so I think a little bit more of a focus on that as a craft I would love to see.
I think there's a kind of tandem answer to this question. So I fully agree with what Lou says. Like, the world is full of really bad services still. We all have bad experiences every day. So let's get on and fix them. But I think that's within the current paradigm and model with which they exist within. And I do think there's a space for designers to look at kind of reimagining like models of delivery of like what a different and new world might look like, and particularly like battling, I guess, some of the learned assumptions that we have around how the world should work. So, you know, I don't want to get too deep towards the end, a historical lesson around colonialism, but like, you know, there's a very like learned Western inverted commas way of thinking about how the world should exist, particularly in business, that you have people who make some money. It's called profit. It's owned by shareholders. And actually there's lots and lots and lots of beautiful and amazing models that have been built by people over the last thousands of years that have kind of been unlearned actually through our education, through our networks, through what we see in the world. And I think there's an opportunity now to start thinking about what does the future of different stuff actually look like, but if it used a completely different model. Like, what does a new mortgage look like? You know, that might sound really boring, but actually it's super interesting when you start thinking about different ways that you could actually earn, you know, your ownership of some land, you know, in a kind of cooperative or collective model. You know, what can we learn from indigenous communities that have like owned their land for thousands of years? And I think for me, like, what I'd like to see in service design is for education and for our own education is to go and seek those out, understand what those different models are, and start to find ways to play with them. I don't think that's easy, by the way. I think we're all you know, quite doctrinated by the briefs that we get from the world that we exist within. But I do really think that that's something that we need to start thinking and playing with. And certainly in Lou and I's future, like, we want to own a farm one day and actually start really playing with some of these models around new forms of land ownership and how communities can live together. But we're not going to claim that we are creating any of those new models, but I think we need to learn them and apply them into the context of which we all want to thrive and live in. So I do think, you know, there's Lou's very brilliant, and I agree, practical answer, because that's a lot of my bread and butter, make shit better. But then there's reimagine as well, and that really takes designers out of the standard professional model of here's a brief, solve it, but I've defined the power structure for you, and move into a here's what the kind of world I'd like to live in, where people don't just survive, they thrive. And I think that is where we need to go, probably.
Again, I get the excitement and the energy of like some sort of real activism and some real like good societal and structure changes. I'm very, very excited about what you're saying. So like, yeah, I'll come live on your farm. Let's do it. Done now. No, it's fantastic. I think that's also, and I get the sense from this talk also, and I hope that people in the crowd also do as well, about like the activism. And I mean, you got an award for this as well, but like the vision sharing and the energize that you give. Every time I hear you guys speak, I always think this as well. All right, sadly, why I'm saying this is because as much as I would love to keep talking with you guys for forever and ever, and next time you should come over to Berlin and let's go clubbing and listen to some drum and bass, maybe.
Yes. Too missy night.
Don't
we could go for a 4.
Don't encourage me. Don't encourage me. Get me a club and I'll be there.
All right. So it sounds like we're in the books, but yeah, sadly this event needs to finish at some appropriate time. It is a work night after all. But I think the last question that I would love to know, and maybe we can leave this as the final words for this talk. We have some extra announcements coming up after this. Is in summary, if you could go back and tell yourself, like looking back in the last 10 years since you graduated, Sarah, and when you were working at the Tate, also Lou, like if you could tell yourself one thing, what would it be, and how do you think it would help you with your success today? Yeah, just what would you give advice to your younger self?
Do you go first? Shall I go first?
You go first.
You sure? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think the job I'm doing right now, as I go in this transition period, is archiving Snook, which is super luxurious and beautiful thing to go and do. Where I'm getting frustrated with myself is for not archiving things well. And we were moving at such a fast pace that files were going everywhere. I didn't codify stuff properly. As the team got bigger, we stopped, taking as many photographs and telling a story of the projects we're doing. So my advice really is archive, tell a story, capture material, tell the story. And a wise man once told me when we were about middle of the way through Snook, he heard me give a talk and I shared a few different projects. He said the only one I remembered was when I showed photographs of the actual process, but the story. And so my advice is this: capture photographs of even what feel like the most banal moment, whether you walk through the client's door, whether it's a stack of paper in the hallway, whether it's the meeting that you have for people wearing suits, like whatever it might be. Like, take contextual photographs of what you're doing, because it will allow you to tell a story later on. And the world changes by telling stories, so that you can copy what someone else has done. And with Snook, I've always said their impact is like threefold. It's impactful on the people that we're designing for and with, and the organization or the system that we're designing within. So that's kind of the first two sides. But the third is when people copy our work around the world. And I feel some people call that like, a legal battle. I call that like really humbling, actually, because it's really, through Snook's career, I've had people contact me across loads of different continents saying, we saw this project you did and we repeated it. But what I'm finding now is I'm looking back, is particularly when I stopped doing a lot of the work, when I did a lot of the work for the first 4 or 5 years, in the last 5 years, and this is of no disrespect to my team because they work bloody hard, is that they maybe just forgot to document as much. So document, archive, tell the story. And I wish I'd known that from the outset.
Do you think you'll write a book?
I've got 4 titles in my head, yes. If I could see it now, actually, I am going to write this blog post when I eventually finish it, but it's called Full Stack Service Design. I've been doing some talks this year at different online conferences about it, so that'll probably be my first book. And then I think just a book on how to run an agency, like, and not have fun. Have fun.
I probably won't get to read it.
Yeah.
I guess. And Lou, what about you? What would you tell younger Lou?
I think I would appear at 6 o'clock in the evening and I would say, go home. I think what I've really realized just about myself, and also the years I've been managing designers and other people, is that the people who care the most burn out the fastest. And that is a real danger in a job where actually your value is often seen to be associated with how much you care about something and how much you represent the voice of users and all of that kind of stuff, in ultimately often organizations that don't see that at all. And so it's a very, very hard job to do, and I think that should never be underestimated. And I would say take very seriously your own mental health, your own time, and fill the time that you don't do design with something completely different. Don't go home and read books about design. Don't go home and check Twitter and tweet about design. Don't go home and write blogs about design.
That's my life.
I know. We're still learning. But find something else that will, if it's making homebrew or whatever else it is, find something to take you away from that, because it's so important. I went through a period, not so long ago, where I realized after 5 years in a role, I woke up one day and I was like, I don't actually know what I like doing. So I went off and learned to sail, and that was great fun. But you should never get to that point in your career where actually you don't really know who you are anymore. And I think that's a really important point. Always remember there is a separation between you and your job, and that's so important, particularly as you become more known for doing your job, and it's really difficult to separate those two things.
Hello.
And our cats walked into the room.
Awesome. I think on those, wow, yeah, cool, awesome. I've had such a blast. I'm going to share my screen now. 2 seconds. Sorry, I'm going to kick everyone's screen into full screen mode, which is always the funnest part of Zoom. Yeah, it's been so fantastic. I am so happy. This was a bit of a dream of mine for quite some time to have Lou and Sarah talk to us, and I'm so glad that it's come about. What is the cat's name, by the way?
Saison. He's a rescue cat, and he was named by a guy who gives his rescue cats themes. So his brother was called Porter, and they're from like the beer cats litter. So yeah, he's named after a very posh Belgian.
Saison de Pont.
Yeah, very posh Belgian beer.
Yeah, and it's awesome. So just to wrap up, guys, yeah, thank you so much. We actually did send you a little gift. We sent you some books. Hopefully they are a little bit outside the design field. We hope that you find them interesting and entertaining. And yeah, so that's
very much.
For the rest of the community, in about a month or so, we hope to have Adam St. John Lawrence, who's also a good friend of Lou and Sarah's, on the talk, doing a talk as well. Similar thing, fireside chat. We can just ask a bunch of questions. If you don't know a little bit of Adam St. John Lawrence, who's called Adam as well, which is the best name in the world, was the original and always will be the best. But he's also helped set up the Global Service Jams, which is a great organization. He also helped wrote a book, Service Design Doing, and he's just an amazingly big character and great personality and good friend to us all. So that'd be great if you return to also hear this talk. But also what we would love to introduce is a little bit of a community corner now. So a little bit of a Berlin community or service design community. So if you've got something to announce, you can just put in the little chat there on the right, what you would like to announce, and then we can let you speak. But I know that this person has something to announce really quickly. Jeff, would you like to present what this lovely screen is about and who this lovely face is here on the right here?
Hi, I'm Jeff, and me along with my longtime friend Hannah Baker, we're launching an advanced UX UI design course. So what we're doing is doing a lot of interactive webinars, online workshops, a course project with lots and lots of feedback. And what we're trying to do is get junior and mid-level designers who maybe on your teams, maybe you work with, maybe they're trying to build the senior level soft skills. So that's really what this course is aimed at. So teaching them project management for tight timelines, how to work with non-designers, and basically just apply UX principles in the most practical way. So we are doing a cohort starting October 19th to November 29th. And if you go to the website and you're interested, download the curriculum and book a call and let's talk about it. And of course, if you know anyone in your giant, wonderful service design networks, send them my way.
All right. Does anyone else have any other announcements? No? Tweet. Well, if you'd like to come work with me at Zalando and you're a senior designer, you can come work with me through that link. There's some jobs going. Okay, well, that's it from us. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or in LinkedIn. Yes, all of the social networks. And the video will be on YouTube in a short time. If you found this entertaining and you want to share it with your mum, then you can please do that. But that is it for today. We really appreciate you guys all coming and registering and joining us for this fireside chat. That is it. If everyone can
Thanks,
turn
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 We can do like an applause thing.
Woo! Actual applause. Real life applause. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Yay. Well, I hope that was fun and entertaining. Yes. Thanks, Jeff. I hope the shout out worked. Thanks for joining us as well.
I love your plant situation. It's amazing.
Yes, I did bring them from on the balcony and around the other places as well. So it's not just my